In the glittering Hamptons, where mansions whisper of old money and power, one man's savage murder exposed a lover's plot so twisted it turned a $30 million fortune into a blood-stained prize. But was it passion, greed, or both that turned a contractor's wrench into the weapon of a lifetime? Before we dive into this chilling crime story, make sure to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Inside this luxurious estate, the lifeless body of millionaire financier Ted Ammon was discovered. A man who had built his empire on Wall Street, Ted had everything: money, power, and influence. Yet none of that could save him from what happened here. At first glance, the story seemed straightforward, perhaps a robbery gone wrong, a tragic but random act of violence. But as investigators dug deeper, it became clear this was no ordinary crime. All eyes soon turned to those closest to Ted: his estranged wife, Generosa, and her new husband, Danny Pelosi, a man with a dark past and dangerous charm. Was this a crime of opportunity, or was it something far more sinister? A story of love, greed, and betrayal that would leave the world asking, who killed Ted Ammon? This is a tale where the truth lies buried beneath layers of deception. Stay with us as we unravel the mystery behind the mansion, the murder, and the motives. Ted Ammon, a name that echoed through the corridors of Wall Street, synonymous with success, ambition, and power. A self-made millionaire, Ted was the embodiment of the American dream. Ruthless, driven, and never satisfied with anything less than the top. At his side stood Generosa Ammon, elegant, intelligent, and as ambitious as her husband. She wasn't just the perfect wife, she was the secret weapon behind Ted's rise. Together they were a power couple, the epitome of New York's elite social scene. Their lives were the stuff of dreams: designer clothes, private jets, yachts, and exclusive events that catered only to the richest of the rich. From the finest art galleries to the most prestigious galas, Ted and Generosa were always at the center of it all. A partnership built on success, wealth, and appearances. But behind the glittering facade, cracks were beginning to form. While Ted devoted himself to his empire, Generosa grew restless in the shadows of his ambition. Late nights, endless meetings, and an ever-growing obsession with success, Ted had no time for the woman who had once been his equal. As the years passed, the cracks deepened. The life they had built, the life that had once seemed so perfect, was beginning to unravel. Generosa, once the star of every social event, now found herself alone in a marriage that seemed to have lost its spark. And though Ted had everything he wanted, he was blind to the growing distance between them. In the shadows of their golden life, a storm was brewing, and it wasn't long before Generosa would look for solace elsewhere. The question now: could their perfect life survive the secrets they both kept hidden, or was something far darker lurking beneath the surface? Danny Pelosi, a man of few words but whose presence spoke volumes. An electrician by trade, but with a history far more complicated than the wires he twisted and turned. Charismatic yet troubled, Danny was a man with a past he couldn't escape, a past that had followed him through every job, every city, until it led him to Generosa Ammon. It wasn't supposed to happen. Generosa, the queen of high society, and Danny, the blue-collar worker with a shadowed past. But when their worlds collided, it was nothing short of explosive. The affair began quietly, an innocent spark, or so it seemed. But in the heat of their forbidden passion, they couldn't stop. Their connection was electric, alive with the kind of intensity neither had experienced before. For Generosa, it was the escape she had longed for, an escape from the cold, distant world of Ted Ammon. For Danny, it was a chance to taste the life he'd only dreamed of. The contrast between them couldn't have been starker. Ted Ammon, polished and refined, the face of New York's elite, and Danny Pelosi, rough-edged and impulsive, a man who had never known the luxury Generosa took for granted. Yet, In their chemistry, they found something real, something raw. As Generosa's affair with Danny blossomed, Ted's world continued to spiral into a relentless pursuit of success. But beneath his business deals and lofty ambitions, a storm was brewing. Generosa was no longer the woman he knew, her affections slipping away, her mind somewhere else. With their marriage at the breaking point, Generosa and Ted filed for divorce, a bitter battle that would unfold in the glare of public scrutiny. The stakes were astronomical, a fortune estimated at $200 million, but what seemed like a financial dispute was something far darker. Ted fought fiercely to keep everything he had built, but Generosa, emboldened by her affair and the promise of a new life with Danny, would stop at nothing to secure her future. In the heat of the divorce, secrets were uncovered, alliances formed, and everything would come down to one final, shocking moment. What lengths would Generosa and Danny go to for the fortune that awaited them? And what price would they have to pay to keep their dangerous secret hidden? October 20, 2001. The night that would change everything. In the quiet luxury of the Hamptons, where the world's wealthiest hid behind gated walls, the life of millionaire Ted Ammon was brutally snatched away. Inside the mansion, Ted Ammon was found dead, his body sprawled across the marble floor, a single blow to the head, brutal, unrelenting. The murder, it seemed, was quick and decisive. But there was something chillingly calculated about the scene. No signs of a struggle, no forced entry, nothing taken from the mansion. It was as if Ted's killer had known exactly where to strike and how to escape unnoticed. The first theory was simple. A robbery gone wrong. A stranger looking for a quick score had broken in, and when Ted had fought back, the situation turned deadly. But as the detectives dug deeper, inconsistencies began to surface. There were no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints, no disturbed valuables, everything in its place except for one thing. Ted Ammon was dead. The more the police investigated, the clearer it became this wasn't some random act of violence. This was personal. Ted's world, his power, his fortune, his relationships had all been meticulously constructed. But someone close to him had the motive, the knowledge, and the opportunity to end it all. As investigators turned their attention to those closest to Ted, his wife Generosa and her new husband Danny Pelosi, theories shifted. Could this be the work of a calculated plot, a conspiracy wrapped in passion and greed? A robbery gone wrong, or a plan that had been in motion for much longer than anyone had suspected? Each moment that passed brought the truth closer, but also the terrifying realization that the people closest to Ted Ammon were now the prime suspects. A mystery shrouded in lies, a crime committed with chilling precision. But who had the most to gain from Ted Ammon's death, and who would be willing to go to such lengths to bury the truth? As the investigation into Ted Ammon's murder continued, all signs pointed toward the two people who knew him best, his estranged wife Generosa and her new husband Danny Pelosi. Generosa's behavior after Ted's death was telling. While the world expected grief from the woman who had once been married to a man with such wealth and power, Generosa showed none. No tears, no visible emotion. Instead, she was cold, almost rehearsed in her responses, a woman who had already moved on, or a woman hiding something. Much darker? Was it possible that Generosa's cold demeanor was merely a mask, a defense against the unbearable? Or did her composure reveal something far more sinister? Did she already know that the net was closing in on her and Danny? And then there was Danny Pelosi, a man with a troubled past. A past that the police could no longer ignore. Once an electrician, always a man of suspicion, with brushes with the law that cast long shadows over his every move. Danny had a history, one that spoke of a man unafraid to bend the law and perhaps break it. His conflicting stories, his ever-changing alibi, made the investigators uneasy. Was he telling the truth? Or was he playing the part of the innocent bystander in a much larger game? As the detectives dug deeper, their suspicions began to converge on one inescapable truth. Danny and Generosa's stories weren't adding up. And then the breakthrough, the discovery that would change everything. A small piece of clothing, discarded carelessly, and on it, Danny Pelosi's DNA, a connection to the crime scene that could not be ignored. It was the evidence that tied him to the murder, proof that somehow he had been there. The discovery sent shockwaves through the investigation. Danny, once a shadow on the fringes of the case, was now at the center. But questions remained. How deep did his involvement go? Had Generosa orchestrated the murder with Danny as her pawn, or was she the mastermind herself? As the investigation closed in, one thing became clear. This was no ordinary crime. This was a carefully planned murder, a web of lies and deceit, spun by those who stood to gain the most. But who had truly pulled the strings? Who was the real killer? The clock was ticking and the walls were closing in, but the truth, that was still buried beneath layers of betrayal. The trial of Danny Pelosi was more than a courtroom drama. It was a national obsession, a story of greed, lust, and betrayal played out on the grandest stage, where every twist was dissected by the media and devoured by the public. On one side, the prosecution painted Danny Pelosi as a man consumed by greed, willing to do anything, even murder, to secure a piece of Ted Ammon's $200 million fortune. Danny Pelosi was no victim. He was a manipulative outsider who saw an opportunity and he took it. He didn't just want Ted Ammon's wealth, he believed it was his for the taking. And on October 20, 2001, he made sure nothing stood in his way. The evidence was damning. Danny's DNA near the crime scene, his conflicting alibis, and the undeniable motive of a man who had everything to gain. But the defense was quick to strike back. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the burden of proof lies with the prosecution. And what do they have? DNA on an item near the crime scene? Circumstantial evidence? They lack the one thing that matters most: direct proof. No witnesses, no cameras, no definitive proof that my client committed this crime. That, ladies and gentlemen, is called reasonable doubt. And then there was Generosa, the woman at the center of it all. Was she an unwitting pawn in Danny's schemes, or was she the true mastermind, pulling the strings from behind the scenes? I was manipulated. I thought he cared about me, but I didn't see it. I didn't see what he was capable of. Was Generosa telling the truth, or was her testimony a calculated move to save herself, leaving Danny to take the fall? The courtroom became a battlefield where every piece of evidence, every word spoken was a weapon. But as the trial dragged on, one question loomed over everything. Was justice being served? Or was the truth being buried beneath layers of lies? When the verdict came, it would shake the nation. But even then, the real question remained. Who was truly guilty, and who had played the ultimate game of deceit? As the trial reached its crescendo, shocking new evidence came to light, evidence that would send shockwaves through the courtroom and beyond. Secret recordings, hidden affairs, and alliances built on lies began to unravel. What was once a tangled web of suspicion now seemed to reveal a sinister partnership. Or was it? The prosecution revealed damning phone records and cryptic exchanges between Generosa and Danny in the days leading up to Ted's murder. But the defense countered with their own twist, suggesting that Generosa may have orchestrated the crime, manipulating Danny from the shadows. Had Danny been a willing accomplice, or a man caught in the gravitational pull of Generosa's ambition? The jury would have to decide, but not without one final bombshell. A letter. A single page that hinted at a conspiracy but left just enough ambiguity to keep the courtroom on edge. After weeks of testimony, countless twists, and endless speculation, the moment of truth arrived. Danny Pelosi was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison, but for Generosa, There was no trial, no charges, no justice in the eyes of those who believed her guilt ran just as deep. Betrayal, imprisonment, and infamy. Danny and Generosa's lives were shattered, their love story twisted into something far more sinister. But the question remained, had justice truly been served? In the end, this wasn't just a story of love gone wrong or greed unchecked. It was a tale of betrayal and blurred lines, where guilt was shared but never fully defined. Were Generosa and Danny both to blame, or was one the true mastermind? The truth, like Ted Ammon's life, may forever remain shrouded in mystery. Sometimes love and greed walk hand in hand, and the price is paid in blood. If you enjoyed this video and want to explore more true crime mysteries, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss another journey into the shadows. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time as we uncover more untold stories.